Thank you all so much for coming and for your interest in the Interdisciplinary Ethics Tech Competition. How many of you have done it before and are back for more besides our speakers? Okay. And how many of you know something about it, have heard about it from friends? All right, so we have a lot of people who don't know anything, so that's great because I'm here to share all the details. So my name is Melanie Kay. If I haven't met you yet, I teach legal ethics here at the law school, and I also run our Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative Collegiate program here at the law school, and other speakers and wonderful people we have with us today. So Sarah Schnickgrund from Silicon Flatirons. Yay! She is going to be one of our main coordinators on this competition. She's done it for years. She is a master at it. Shireen, do you want to say hi? Shireen is here from Leeds, helping coordinate one of the interdisciplinary angles of the competition is involvement from students from all over campus, a big source of which is from Leeds Business School. We've got Michelle Logan here. And helps a lot with all of our Daniels Fund Ethics Initiative programming and was in charge of all the amazing pizza today. And I also want to introduce our students who are here to share their experience from prior years. I think Kaylee's not here yet, but we have Sean, Helef, and Bo. Thank you guys for being here, and I'll turn it over to you in a moment. So most of you probably have some sense of what this competition's about. As I already mentioned, it's a really cool interdisciplinary opportunity. I feel like when I was in law school and I gather it's somewhat similar, there are not a ton of opportunities to interact with other graduate students from different departments across campus. And it can, I think, really feel like you're in a little law school bubble for 3 years. And so this is a really cool chance to get to work on teams with other graduate students in disciplines like business and also computer science, information science. We've had journalism students, we've had engineering students. So really runs the gamut, and you get to know them in more than just a superficial way. I think sometimes you go to events where other students are there, but it's hard to really get to know them and forge a deeper connection. And this is a way to really build your network with other students on campus. So that's the interdisciplinary part of it. And then there's the ethics tech part of it. So the competition is based on a case problem that is new and totally, unique each year. And it pulls typically from the headlines, kind of advances in technology that are happening right now that people are talking about and trying to navigate. And then there's the ethics component where a lot of times this technology comes with a lot of unknowns, trying to figure out the best uses for it. And that raises ethical issues of, it's kind of a Pandora's box situation with a lot of these emerging technologies of this is great, all these capabilities it has, but what's the kind of darker side? What are the ways that this could be misused or the unintended consequences on society? And so it's a really neat chance to combine all those things and explore some of these questions with these interdisciplinary teams. So the way that it works, more on the logistics side of things, just for your calendars, the competition this year is Saturday, February 3rd. Typically, I would say put a hold on your calendar from roughly 8 to 3. It tends to start later than that and end earlier than that, but that at least keeps you safe. And you are assigned to an interdisciplinary team, typically with anywhere from maybe 3 to 4 other students. And we do the assignments for you. I'll talk about why we do that in a moment, but we try to make sure each team has as good of a balance as possible of all the different disciplines. So unless, we don't do as good of a job recruiting, you should not be on a team with all law students. It will be at least 2 or 3 other disciplines total in the group to try to bring all of your strengths to addressing the problem. And what your team is charged with doing is developing a response presentation to the case that we give you. The cases are pretty involved. They're usually several pages long. They involve a whole cast of characters, and you're usually put in the role of either a person or like an organization, a government, regulatory board, something like that, to sort of answer the call of the case. So usually they're giving you a direct thing, like you have to make a presentation to a regulatory agency, about your business proposal for X, and you would cover law, business, technology, angles, ethics issues, something like that. So there's a very clear prompt of what your team is supposed to do. And you develop first a one-page kind of executive summary of your position that gets submitted ahead of time. And then you prepare a kind of visual or audio, not visual, presentation where each member of the team is kind of delivering different parts of the presentation, recommendations. It's not slides or any other kind of like things to hand out, nothing like that. So it's much more kind of on your feet, talking to a team of judges. I'll go back now to team assignments. So as I mentioned, we do the assignments for you. So I know for some of you that might be like, because you want to do it with your friends or you're nervous about who we're going to stick you with. And I will say that I think this is one of the cooler parts of the competition, in that it's a neat chance to get to meet new people and as I said, kind of learn about them in a pretty deep way. And Sarah is our matchmaking expert, and she takes her job extremely seriously. So she will collect from people who sign up for the competition as much information as she can about you, your interests, your experiences, and she very deliberately will pair you with people with whom she thinks you have either something in common or a valuable networking connection could be made. So maybe you're interested in the same industry. Maybe you want to go work in a certain city at a certain company, and there's someone from another department who used to work at that company in that city. Things like that. So the more she knows about you, she'll ask for your resume and some other information, the better those pairings can be. And yes?
There has been one marriage that has come out.
There has even been a marriage. So I'm not kidding about the matchmaking. You too can find true love. You didn't know that's what you were here for.
No, I
know we have to do matchmaking propositions.
And she is extremely careful about other factors too. If you're, for example, a 1L and you don't feel like you know as many people, she'll try to pair you with, if there's an upper class person who would be a good fit for you to partner with because they've done what you want to do, things like that. She incorporates all of those things into the pairings to the best we can. I can't promise you that like every single relationship, amongst the teams is always amazing. But on the bright, optimistic side, I will say even the challenging things are opportunities for growth. And so, even when teams do struggle with either communication or someone slacking or anything like that, these are incredibly valuable experiences to have for life. Because a lot of times you go join an office and somebody that you're paired with on a working team sucks, right? And so how do we communicate about that? Who do we go to? How do we get them to do better? What if they just won't? All of those are really actually valuable lessons to have. Of course, we hope that that's not something you'll have to work on while you're in the competition, and most of the time that's not the case. But that kind of opens the door to some other benefits of this competition that I wanted to mention, which were really the sort of real world practical benefits of doing something like this. So this is very different than like a moot court or a mock trial. This is much more like kind of real world business setting. So if any of you are interested in going in-house or, working for a regulatory agency or something like that, this helps build some of those more sort of practical interdisciplinary skills in a way that a lot of more legal litigation focused projects, competitions aren't. And especially the interdisciplinary angle, where many of you will go out and work with lots of people, some of whom are lawyers, some of whom are not. And it's really helpful to realize the way that different people view problems based on their backgrounds and educations. So lawyers, have you ever heard the saying, like, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail? So lawyers, when you're a lawyer, everything looks like a legal problem. And we get very used to assessing risk, saying no because of said risk, coming up with all kinds of rule-based, quirky kind of arguments about things that are often way too in the weeds for people who are not lawyers. And it's absolutely fascinating to see, for example, how a business student responds to a problem. It's very different. And in terms of the factors that they've been taught to prioritize and focus on, and what constitutes success for someone coming from the business school can be different than what constitutes success for someone coming from the law school or computer science, completely different way of thinking about problems. So the opportunity to do something like that is amazing and something you put all over your resume and you talk about in job interviews. because a lot of students don't have that. And it's a really cool opportunity to learn how to work across disciplines. The ethics element of this too, again, I can't tell you how many students have come back to us and told us after the fact, the second an employer saw ethics on my resume in an interview, it was like, that's all they wanted to talk about. They were thrilled that I care about ethics, that this is something that I chose to take on. And a lot of times these problems are the very problems that employers are working on now. So we've had other students say, during the interview, the employer said to me like, wow, that's really interesting. The case was about that. Our company's actually trying to do it. What did you guys think? And so really, really neat. So a couple more logistics. As I mentioned, competition open to grad students or occasionally high-achieving juniors and seniors in like the business school or engineering programs. The teams will be assigned after a kickoff meeting in January. So for now, you don't have to commit, but we do encourage you, if you think this is something of interest, to put your name on a sign-up sheet or on the website for the competition. You can enter your info there, and you'll get updates about upcoming deadlines. But there will be a kickoff meeting in January where we will release the case problem, and that triggers a roughly 2-week period where you get to work with your teams before the competition starts in February. So the prep time is roughly 2-ish weeks, and most students find that to be just the right amount of time. Anything more and people start to get like obsessive and overwhelmed with like still having this thing on their plate. Anything less and it starts to feel a bit stressful. So usually 2 weeks is about the sweet spot. You will get your team assignments as soon, like basically the morning after that kickoff meeting, because that's when everybody makes a firm commitment and then we know who we're working with to place on teams. And then your executive summary will be the first thing due. That tends to be due just a couple days before the competition. That's just a 1-page sheet kind of summarizing your arguments. We'll explain in more depth as it gets closer what that actually is and what it should look like. That gets submitted to the judges. And then on the day of the competition, you come to the law school. It kicks off with some food. And then what's amazing about this competition is it is a series of rounds of these presentations you're giving. So these aren't like elimination rounds, but they're getting scored each time. And what is so cool about this model is usually you have 2 or 3 rounds, and then the highest scoring teams get to go to the finals round. In each of these initial rounds, you're in smaller rooms with only 2 or 3 judges, so it's not quite as intimidating. You're giving your kind of presentation, and then what's amazing is you get instant feedback from the judges in your room, and you get to take that feedback and incorporate it quickly before your next round. So if you're doing a good job, it means that every time you get feedback, you're really quickly, kind of conversing with your team members and figuring out, okay, sounds like you didn't articulate that clearly enough. Sounds like I need to add more facts about X to make this more persuasive. Then you do it again. You try it again, and you see what room 2 says. You incorporate their feedback. Each time you're getting scored. And after the 3rd round, the highest scoring teams, usually it's like 6 or 7 that make it to the finals.
That was more like 5.
Like 5? Okay, I forget. But a good chunk of the teams make it to the finals round. That's when you go into the big courtroom in front of everybody. There's a much bigger panel of judges, and you do your presentation one last time. Then we tally up all those scores, and then the winners are announced at a networking lunch that happens immediately after. So that's the kind of what the day looks like. In terms of the judges, Sarah and other faculty members in different disciplines do a phenomenal job recruiting judges from all over. And often they are from companies doing this kind of work, whether it's on the legal side, the business side, the compliance side. And we try to be as inclusive as possible to bring in as many different types of judges as we can. And that is one of the highlights of getting to do this and getting to move around a couple different panels of judges is, again, with the matchmaking, no marriages here, this would be inappropriate, but you get to meet judges in the room that you're in, and it's kind of like a chance to impress them. And often Sarah picks the judges, she's matchmaking, again, in a non-romantic way, of what judges would be great for you to be in front of. And the more you tell her, the better she can do with that. So it's a chance to be like, hey, let me show you my stuff, and then we can talk later, and maybe you have a job for me in another year and a half, or whatever it is. Also at the lunch, you'll get a chance to mingle with all these really impressive people and build those connections as well. So there's a lot of perks to this competition, and a lot of times people focus on just like, I want to win first prize. You don't have to win first prize. You've already won just by participating in the competition from all the amazing experiences and connections that you'll have from doing this. If you do win, there's some great prizes. Again, not the main focus, but we do, thanks to our Daniels Fund grant, we're able to offer pretty significant scholarship prizes for the winning teams. So the first place team gets to split a $10,000 scholarship award. So depending on how many people there are in your group, it's a good chunk of change. And other teams get smaller scholarship awards as well. I would say in terms of time commitment, it's not as bad as you may be worrying at this moment. Typically, I'll let the students speak about this more, about the kind of time commitment they felt it required. But we hear even sometimes that teams only were able to meet in person like once or twice. You know, it was a couple hours here, a couple hours there. Everyone kind of scattered and did their own, research. They divvied up things to do, came back as a group. So I do not get the sense that it is an overwhelming, all-consuming kind of commitment. But I will let them speak to their own experiences. So before I turn it over to the students, I will just say most important things from today, make sure you get your name to us so that we can give you email updates. There is a sheet of paper that we'll send around, but also really easy is just go to the competition website and there's a place to indicate your interest, and we'll make sure you get updates. If you have friends interested in participating, send them to our website. And one last logistics thing for the January kickoff meeting, if you decide to do it, we do ask for a $20 fully refundable deposit. And I'll just get out of it ahead of time. We can't take Venmo. We can't take any of the digital stuff. It's like we're not allowed to have your money, in that way because it's less traceable or whatever. But so go to an ATM, get a physical $20 bill, makes it much easier, and just bring it. We put your name on it, we stick it in an envelope, we give it back to you the day of the competition. And that may sound weird, but the reason we do that is because we have, before instituting this, we did have some problems where people would something would come up that week, they decided to bail, they let down their whole team, somebody who was responsible for researching something all of a sudden just was gone. We've even had students where they participated and just didn't show up the day of the competition and left their co-competitors hanging. Never lost students, it was always other people. But so we have found that the deposit helps people feel less inclined. It's just that more of a motivator to not give up on it after you've committed. So any questions for me before I turn it over to the students?
So I have a 1L. This seems very similar to what I understand the ethics elective to be. What is are they kind of very similar?
You mean the seminar class?
The seminar, yeah.
Oh, yeah, very different. So I teach that class, so I can speak to it. So this is just a 2-week competition. Right. The seminar is a whole class over the course of a semester, and then the end component of that is mentoring undergraduates doing an ethics competition. You're not a competitor when you're a 1L in that seminar. You're just assigned to an undergrad team and you're sort of helping them prepare and review, but you don't actually get to compete. So really different experience, and that you're kind of on your own mentoring undergrads. This you're working with a team of graduate students. So different experiences, but I highly recommend them both. Other questions? Anything I missed? Okay, do you want to say any more about?
No, I just want to let everyone know that, we are reaching into our alumni network, and this competition backs up to our flagship conference. So a lot of our speakers, a lot of folks that are out of town do serve as judges for this competition. My goal here is to find you a good mentor, to find you some good connections, to help you create a network, and to find you a job. So a lot of these folks are hiring. So, it's going to be really hard for me to help you find a summer job. A, if I don't know you, but B, if you are not showing up to this. So if you want my help, this just makes it a lot easier on both ends. So.
Okay, I will turn it over to our amazing students to share their experiences.
I don't know. Wait,
Well, I don't know who's taller.
I'm taller than him.
Yeah, did you guys have anything you wanted to why don't you each give your kind of rundown of your experience and then we can open it up to students to ask you questions.
Sure. Is everyone here a law student, or are there people from other graduate programs? Other grad? Nice.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah. But mostly law students in the room, so our perspectives are going to be pretty analogous for you guys. Anyway, my name is Bo Phillips. I'm a 2L. I did this last year. My team was myself and actually Jaislyn, who's here, and then we had a business student and a physics PhD.
I'm Kaylee. I am also a 2L. And yeah, I was on a team with Halef last year. It was an amazing experience. My favorite part was kind of like the interdisciplinary aspect. We had a master's computer science master's on the team, and also a business undergrad student. So yeah, just hearing their different perspectives and kind of hearing oh, that wouldn't work from a technical perspective, or that wouldn't, and us being oh, well, that wouldn't work from a regulatory perspective, and just running through those different solutions, and it was, I thought, a really valuable experience.
I'm Sean. I'm a 3L. I did it both 1L and 2L years. So I have the first year we were still half remote, half in person. So that whole event was online. It was really, really fun to do all the in-person stuff and present multiple times last year. One question that I remember having coming in was am I, as a 1L, going to be the legal expert on this team? Because I sure as hell didn't feel like a legal expert at that moment. But then the people on my team started asking questions, and I was oh wait, I kind of know the answer to that. Doug Spencer taught me something about that. Let's go. So it was a really cool experience in all the ways that have been spoken about, but I also think it was a nice little confidence builder. And every interview that I've been in, to echo what was said earlier, has said, hey, what is the Daniels Ethics Fund and what did you do for this? And it's a good open door to being I'm more than just every other law student that's doing all the other things that law students do consistently.
Hi everyone, I'm Khalef. I'm also a 3L. I only participated in my 2L year, and to kind of add up to what Sean was just saying, I thought maybe it was too late because, I didn't participate in my 1L year. It wasn't. I don't plan to participate as a 3L, but I think even that is I thought about it. Okay, maybe not. But so yeah, the what year you are kind of, or whether you're even in law school or not, is not really that important or that critical to it, because it is at the end of the day that teamwork that makes it work. I think for me, one of the most important parts was actually presenting in front of people, because these are subject matter experts, or at least people who know a lot more about whatever topic it is that you're talking about presenting. And thinking on your feet kind of because they're asking you a question, and if that's something that you haven't necessarily thought about, you have to kind of come up with something. And I thought that was most closely resembling of real life, I don't know, if you go and talk to your boss, whether that's a partner or your director or whatever, and you have presented something and they ask a question about the thing that you presented, just overall those skills, obviously in addition to actually talking, cooperating with people from other disciplines.
Can each of you talk about the time commitment?
Sure.
And what it was like for your group, how you structured preparing?
Yeah, so I think we met as a group either 2 or 3 times before getting together to practice our presentation. So we met pretty early on just to sort out, how are we going to go about this? And then we had a couple check-ins as we did it. But most of it was individual work that you would do or research that you would do and then contribute like to a Google Doc. You kind of create a script for yourselves almost for your presentation. I would say generally you probably want to do somewhere between 10 and 20 hours of work in the 2 weeks leading up, including meeting as a group. But like an hour or so a day, if you kind of budget that, should be plenty of time to get familiar with the problem, to research some topics. I mean, you guys are not going to need to go deep into case law. There probably isn't going to be a lot of case law about this. You're going to mostly be reading news articles or reading the abstracts from law review articles on the subject. Like, it's not a matter of how deep you can get. It's a matter of how many different angles can you think about this problem, and kind of like to what Helef was saying, how prepared are you going to be to answer any kind of question that might come up with at least some competency?
Yeah, just to add to that, my team did it was similar to that. Helef and we had 2 law students on our team, which was really nice. I feel like I learned a lot from working with a 2L as a 1L. So we met at least one time for like a few hours, just trying to parse out the legal components. So we did that in addition to like meeting all together with our group. But yeah, a lot of it was individual work and then just coming to our meetings prepared and kind of knowing what elements we're gonna propose to the solution. But yeah, I would say it was more like 20 hours for me, just because I'm a person who, when I'm public speaking, I need to practice a lot, which is something to keep in mind. But yeah, it definitely wasn't any crazy time commitment, and to that, I really enjoyed all the time I put into it. I feel like I learned a ton.
I think my time commitment was similar, around 20 hours. My group met like once initially, that was kind of quick, where we all kind of threw our ideas out and made a plan of what everyone was going to research into. And then we had a second meeting that was much longer because our initial plan was not going to make any sense. And we did a little pivot, and then similar to Bo's group, it sounds like we met up and on the 3rd floor of the law school and like practiced going through it. And because it's pretty tight time window, 5 minutes that you have to dig into it?
It's usually like 7.
Yeah.
7 minutes.
And then we'll cut you off.
Yeah.
And then additional time for questions, or is that part of your 7 minutes?
7 minutes, and then usually like 3 minutes for questions.
And answering their questions. And more or less answers, about 20 hours, which isn't that, it's early in the semester, and also as a second semester 1L, things like start to feel more, I did this last semester, and I'm less stressed out about, reading every single page of every single
So you know how to read faster.
Yeah, you know how to read faster. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I guess like there really isn't much more I could add, but I would say maybe like you said 20. Now I feel bad because I felt like it was a little less than that.
Yeah, but you were older. Like I was still figuring out.
Yeah. So I mean, again, like to go back to Professor Kate's statement saying like this is like really what you make of it. Obviously, it's a teamwork, but it literally could be done with like 10 hours as well. And obviously, like if you're participating in it, you should try to do a good job. And if that means 10 hours, great. If it means 30 hours, and if you have time to do that, to learn, to improve yourself, then like that's good too. Mine definitely was on the lower end. I was like busy with like some other weird stuff at the time. But what else? That answers the question.
Yeah, that's great.
I would like to add just because Sean made a good point, like next semester, law students, you guys school is going to, I mean, it's still going to be your priority, but that is almost going to like operate on autopilot in the background. You're going to have other things on your plate that are drawing most of your primary attention. So when you're thinking about this, like 10 to 20 hours may not seem like a lot, and I would encourage all of you to still do this competition, but really the decision you need to be making time budgeting wise is like, are you also trying to do mock trial? Are you also trying to do the internal transaction competition? How quickly or how early in the semester are you going to start looking for a job? Like, consider that there's going to be several things that you may want to dedicate your attention to.
Just one last addition to Bo's addition. So like because it's going to be like early in the semester, you really don't need to worry about like any of those things. That's
Jack Shapiro, that's not
I did all of those things and I was fine.
you can do it. You'll be
I did
fine.
all of those
You'll be
things and I
fine.
thought it was a lot.
I did want to, one of Bo's points I wanted to spend a little bit more time on was sort of strategies with this competition and not going down rabbit holes and not getting hyper technical. And he made a really good point of like, this is not the kind of thing where like you want to dive in and do insane legal research on some really esoteric points and wow everybody with your technical like computer coding expertise of someone on your team. While sometimes those things, you know, here and there, like throwing in an element of something pretty sophisticated is great. It's 7 minutes, which is really hard to get out a ton of like into the weeds on. And also, people often get frustrated because hyper-technical attention to detail is rewarded less than creativity, coverage of the issues, you know, creative solutions, common sense kind of questions, concepts, you know, points that teams are making. And so a lot of times we see feedback later where someone's like, I don't understand, like the coding mechanism that team proposed isn't even right and wouldn't even work. And it's like, you know, that's often less the point than the sort of like, are you thinking about this big picture? Did you spot the reasons why this could be a bad ethical dilemma? Did you come up with creative ideas for how you could maybe mitigate those issues or solve the problems? But that doesn't require like going down these crazy rabbit holes and chasing red herrings and things like that. So it's a great way too to think holistically, to think big picture, rather than, you know, insanely minute legal research or other areas of research. Any other questions for our students? Okay, well, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you brought up, you know, since the majority of this class right now is 1Ls, and you brought up, you're like, oh, I knew something because Doug Spencer had talked about that. All of us don't have Doug Spencer, and I only recognize him as a constitutional law professor. So, basing off of your experience, what from the first half of your 1L year put you in a position where you're like, okay, I can answer that question, I can do this. Because again, none of us is taking constitutional law yet, and that would be next semester, so unless you're telling us that you're 4, 5, 6 weeks in your second semester.
I had him for common law in second semester, and we had a question of like, are we allowed to do this? I can't remember what it was actually 2 years ago. The question was specifically, but like I had like gone through, you know, the class because I knew the con law was a little section of the question, and we had addressed it, and I had a case that I brought up in response to one of the questions the judge had for me. So it's going to be something that you're not expecting. There's going to be some little aspect of tort that like AI is causing a problem to someone. You're like, oh, that seems like I haven't taken torts for a while. That was a bad idea for myself. It will surprise you that like the knowledge you have from 1L is applicable.
Also, I don't remember using much knowledge from my classes. It was more like my own legal research and like using those skills. And yeah, kind of just using the background of the law and yeah, in general.
If I may add just like one last thing, I think it's not as much like, oh, what specific case or what specific class you took that was somewhat relevant or enabled you to grapple with the issue in a legal way. it's more like, even like after your first semester, you will have taken LegReg, right? Like at the very least, so like will be familiar with APA, right? Like, oh, agencies. Well, agencies usually do most of the rulemaking kind of that then, I don't know, organize our lives around like what companies can do and whatnot. So it's more like the overall kind of big picture thing that I think you learn even in your first semester that becomes more relevant rather than like a very specific class or a very specific case at some point for the question that will be asked.
You were so close to saying thinking like a lawyer. You were that close to saying.
Would it help to know what the prompt was from last year, like in a summary, to give you an idea of like what you might be up against?
Yeah.
Okay, so last year was focused on AI and specifically AI's ability to make deep fake videos and graphics. And so everyone was testifying in front of Congress. I think we were working for Google, is that right? So your team was like representatives from Google testifying in front of Congress, and it was super broad and open because what you were supposed to do was recommend to Congress some sort of regulation plan, some sort of scheme going forward, or whether or not it was fit for federal regulation, or if it should be a private sector problem, or if it should be states should figure it out on their own. So it was not like, there were 100 different ways that you could approach it. We went about it with First Amendment and speech rights, intellectual property rights for AI creating something, name, image, and likeness. And then we went about it from like our physics PhD was very concerned about like the learning models for the AI and everything and trying to get the federal government out ahead of that. Our business student was an Army vet and she was like, this is a national security issue. We need to get the military involved with this. So like it gets outside the law school classroom pretty quickly.
Would you say then that like, I don't know what your guys' like undergraduate or like, work history backgrounds are, but would you say that fit into how you approach this problem? And if you are not in like a tech or business background, would you think that would like put you at a disadvantage?
I don't think so at all. It's more just like I just use my problem solving skills, and like there were like projects, like international development projects I worked on in undergrad, and like just using those like figuring out the stakeholders and like weeding through the possible solutions. Like it's all that stuff. And I don't have a tech background or anything. And yeah, we made out fine.
I agree.
Same political science background, no tech. And that's all I've done in law school.
Yeah, I was thinking like, and it comes up in weird ways. Like if you were an art history major, it actually would have been useful, and that's totally unexpected in like a legal ethics tech competition. But one part of the problem was, this AI generated art, deepfake videos, that kind of thing. And so like your background could likely contribute in ways you would never anticipate. Definitely do not need a tech foundation. You don't need to know how to code. You don't need to know like how this stuff works. Totally, this is really accessible for anybody.
And I think the good part about the being in a team is you possibly will have somebody who studies something really technical. So like whatever you are lacking kind of in that knowledge, they'll provide that. But none of us had any technical background.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if any questions arise between now and then, don't hesitate to reach out.